to really dive into being a dad, man. Really diving into having a conversation. A lot of us out here are stuck in the middle of just life and juggling family and bad jokes that we tell, dad jokes, all that kind of good stuff.
My dad jokes be funny. Speak for yourself.
Hey,
all
listen.
my stuff, knee slappers.
Knee slappers. You hold the crowd together.
As
Is
you
that
can
it?
tell, watch
I got
this.
it. I'm gonna have to find me some good audio clips to put it there for you. But listen, man, we want to welcome you to the Wash Dads podcast, episode 1.
Episode 1. It's
And
the pilot.
listen, I am so excited. My name is Brendan McElroy. I am a father of 2 beautiful children. I am a husband to a beautiful wife. I have some fur babies as well, and a couple of assorted fish that float around upstairs. Hey, listen, we talk about being a wash dad. That's what it is. But I truly want to invite all of you and welcome all of you to this show. I mean, we are all about having a conversation on Wash Dads and really talking about just life and life in general. I hope that you will come with us on this journey, dive into the world of a wash dad. We promise to have some entertaining conversations, some relatable topics, and some nostalgia throughout this process, and definitely pure doses of authenticity. And together in this podcast and in this journey, we're going to create some memories and spark some good conversations and leave a lasting legacy for those that are coming up behind us. So with that, welcome to the Washed Dad podcast. And I have my very first honored guest, the Mr. Christopher Scott.
Ooh, clap it up, clap it up.
Hey. I'm gonna let you introduce yourself because you are a man of many talents. But I'm gonna kick it off with just the basics. Tell me a little bit about you, man. Where did you grow up? Who is Christopher Scott? Where did you come from?
Yeah, Chris Scott. Hardly home, but always repping that great Motor City, Motown, Detroit, Michigan. Just had 313 day. When you talk about everything that makes me who I am, I feel like Detroit, it always starts with Detroit. For me, like I'm a big ball of energy and just saying anything about my hometown. But, dad, political, just lover of life, lover of experience life, follower of God, a lot of titles, but yeah. I think I always tell people, since becoming a dad, like that's probably the favorite title that I've earned at this point in my life. And,
absolutely.
Because it's hard being a dad.
It is.
Sometimes. And not everybody necessarily always shows up. And I feel like that's a big part of just being a dad is knowing how to show up every day. Even on the days that sometimes you feel like you can't get up for yourself. So,
no, I feel you on that. And look at you, you're already diving in, man. And we ain't even got to start.
Are you kidding me?
We were just trying to get to know where you come from.
Your intro on the pilot. Talking about this is a pilot episode. I ain't never recorded a podcast.
Hey,
sounds pretty good to me.
This first one. And there's not a better man to have. I mean, he said it very light, but he's a dad. He's out here running coast to coast, quite literally, with his role. And I don't know, are we allowed to talk about what you do yet, or is it still under wraps?
So I am the coalitions director for the Vice President of the United States on her campaign team.
I just want, did y'all hear that? You are the coalition director for the who, did you say?
The Vice President of the United States, our MVP, Kamala Harris.
Hey, I am honored to sit next to you. I mean, I'm always honored to sit next to you, but I'm just saying, in this role...
Y'all hear how he gassed me up. Don't believe the hype. I'm really not that great.
Hey.
I'm just Chris.
Nah, okay, wait a second. On this show, we're gonna hype up the dads on this show. I just want to make sure that we all on the same page. We are hyping up the dads because it's important. That's our whole point of this, right? Is to really talk about, being a dad, man, and what the life looks like. So I'm gonna give you your reps and I'm gonna give you your flowers. I mean, we got some fake ones in front of us, but I'm just saying, they do look nice, but they might need to be dusted a little bit. That's the part of being a dad.
I promise y'all, this is just us. This is our energy at, what time is it? 11:29
Hey.
at night.
Hey, But we're getting it done. Because you know what? Let's be real about it. Dad life goes for a long period of time. I mean, you had to put your little one down earlier. I had to put my little one down earlier.
After a 6.5 hour drive from DC to Columbus. But that's what happened when you have family.
That's it.
And you need to make sure your kids are getting to see all their friends, no matter where they are in the country. It's been about 2 years since I've been back in Columbus, and we were talking earlier, the weird feeling of, I'm from Michigan. Everybody knows I'm not a huge fan of the state of Ohio necessarily, but at the same time, like, coming in, I was like, man, this state really did grow on me. I kind of missed it.
We kind of do.
Why do I miss this? This doesn't
that.
feel right.
we kind of latch on to you, especially the good ones. We don't like to let y'all go. So we do our best to convert you, although from a sports world, we know we'll never be able to convert you from 3-1-3. I mean,
never.
You got the Wolverines, go blue.
National champion.
Hey,
Michigan Wolverines.
Let's talk about it. I'm just saying.
Okay.
And then where we start to differ a little bit, you got your hockey. I know you're a Wings fan.
Well, I mean, y'all just got a team in Columbus.
Hey, wait a second. That was 20 years ago, sir.
What's that, 20? It's 20
It's been
years?
24 years that we've had this team.
Yeah. Y'all still don't have a title.
We ain't gonna talk about that. Keep it moving. So truly, I am grateful for you stopping in. And as you already said, you drove 6 hours to get here. You had the father time, the son time. How's that go, man? I mean, with you traveling as much as you do, what does that look like for you and little Chris? How's that go?
So I think one of the biggest things is road trips for us are really good bonding time. I would say, say I have an 8-hour road trip with Chris. He might sleep 2 hours, might listen to music for another 2 hours, and then the rest of the car ride, he's just like, Dad, what we talking about?
Oh, he's talking.
And he wants to talk. And then, you always know when your kid's getting tired towards the end, because it starts to be like, how many more miles do we got?
How
much longer are we going? I told you, an hour and a half. Has it been an hour and a half? It's been 5 minutes.
It's been 5 minutes. And little Chris is how old now?
5.5.
Wow.
Turned 6 in July. So actually older than 5.5. I think the thing about just being a parent in general and being a dad is just watching how fast these kids actually grow up, and you think about the memories that you were building with them early on. I think about, right now still teaching him how to ride a bike and things like that.
Yeah.
But you still have those fresh memories from when they took their first steps. I remember when our kids met for the first time.
That was an adventure.
I don't know how often I want them to get together, because every time they relink up, it just seems like double trouble.
Listen.
But I love it. I absolutely love it. And so, whether or not it's a road trip, I think, for me, being a dad is just creating those constant memories, those constant bonds, and making sure that your child, they're still a human being, and that your kid feels seen by you.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of times, we always want to be seen, but you don't always hear about parents making sure that they see their kids as they're developing, because they're changing all the time.
Absolutely. I mean, we're constantly working, right? We're constantly trying to make a living. Mm-hmm. We're out here grinding day in, day out. Some of us are traveling all across the country with, Didn't
you just finish a West Coast swing? Why are you talking about my travel schedule?
That's what I'm saying. We traveling. We're out here doing it. I did do a West Coast swing for work for myself. And man, it can be difficult, That's a lot of difficult time being away and sending, little videos back and forth, doing FaceTime. And especially when you go West Coast, you got a 3-hour gap.
Yep.
So I'm just getting off work. They're already going down for bed. So you're trying to wiggle in some time to do a little all right, Daddy loves you, maybe read a book, or at least do nighttime prayer or something, So that's tough, man. And that's one of the reasons that I wanted to talk to you a little bit, right? So the whole point of this podcast is really help other young men coming into this world of dad, coming into the world of relationships, coming into the world of just trying to be the best human they can be, right? Talk to me a little bit how that feels for you when you are out there, when you're traveling, when you're moving, and as you just said, right, you're wanting little Chris to see you. Mm-hmm. Like, how does that work for you? What do you dive into? Where do you pull strength from to keep going on that?
I mean, every day I think, the days I'm on the road, the number of times I've just gone through my phone and looked at pictures when you're missing your kiddo. But there's days that, like, I don't feel strong, that I don't get my energy back in. There's times where I'm playing with him, but he would never know, like, how exhausted I actually am. But I think the thing I've been trying to teach him lately, because he's of this mindset of dad can fix everything.
Yeah.
Dad's invincible.
Yeah.
Dad doesn't get scared. And it was literally a few weeks ago that me and him were having a conversation, and I was like, no, Dad does get scared quite a bit. Dad gets nervous, just like everybody else. And he's like, Dad, you never look like it. And I think that is, when we talk about being a dad, like, Dad never looks like it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when you were talking about the podcast and why you wanted to we started having this conversation about the number of times, how many pictures you see on social media, and you don't know the story behind that picture. Right. You don't know, you see the smile and you don't know how hard it was to put on that smile that day. The times where, you know, your kid from like 7 o'clock in the morning is already go time, like, I want to play, I want to action this, and it's like, I just need 5 more minutes. That had a really rough weekend. You still just snap in, but as important as it is to snap in those moments, it's also just as equally important to have a support group. Great. I think, you know, we were talking about it over dinner, how often, you know, women are able to have these support groups to feel seen, to continue to have these conversations, and we don't necessarily have that as men. And the number of times where I've put up a post just like, you know, on the outside Dad looks like this, and on the inside it's doubt. Am I doing good enough? Am I going hard enough? And that's the stuff that nobody sees, and not enough times we pour back into each other and talk about that to make sure that we're also building that community, especially as Black men.
Man, listen, you said a whole, I mean, we could end the podcast there, to be honest with you, because it really does come down to that, right? Like, we put so much in, but we don't take the time to really heal ourselves. We don't take the time, and you put it perfectly, right? Pouring into one another. I mean, you and I, we've known each other for every bit of what? 9 years, 10?
It's almost a decade.
Almost a decade now, right?
Time flies.
Ooh, man. Especially when you're having fun. Well, I mean, when you ain't around it, fly. No, but I mean, we've known each other for a long time. Our kids weren't even around when we first met each other. And you think about how many times do we check in on each other and we call each other out on it, right?
We've gotten
every time.
Better.
We've gotten better. Yep. We've gotten better. But I think that even grows with having children, right? And having this title of dad, where you get to a space of like, man, I got to check in with somebody that can understand me. I got to check in with somebody that can feel the pain that I feel. Somebody that sees underneath that smile and that post that I posted, you know, last week or yesterday or this morning.
And it's more than just saying, hey, like, you know, how did you potty train your son? Because I think about how many, I had some friends that they had boys before I had a boy, and I'm like, he's going through this phase. How did you work this out? But it's so much more than that of what you actually need to check in about.
Man, how many conversations have we had where it's just like, bro, how are you doing? And we had to ask each other twice because we wanted to make sure, don't give me the surface level, right? Like, don't give me the, oh man, I'm good, work's going good, right? Like, no, how are you doing?
Well, it's the thing of like, I'm fine. Okay, say that 3 more times until you believe in yourself.
Right, yourself. Because I don't believe it. I'm looking at your face, right? Or I'm listening to you on the phone and I hear your tone like, bruh, who you lying to? Because it's not me, right? But okay, so let's dive into that for a sec though. Why don't we have those conversations more? As men, as dads, what do you feel holds us back? I know I have my thoughts around it, but like in your opinion, what do you feel holds us back in having those real conversations and making sure that we prioritize getting poured into as much as we pour into other people?
So I think for me, it's interesting because growing up, I was a very hard on your sleeve kid, want to love the world, want to show my emotions. My parents, both my dad and mom, really reinforced that was okay. But at an early age, the world also told me, no, you're not supposed to do that as a man. And so I think as time goes on, that was a big thing, when I was in therapy, and I'm a big believer of going to therapy. Absolutely. If you feel like you need it just to have the extra space. But part of that was just healing that, reminding yourself that it's okay to be emotional. It's okay to talk about these things. Those are the things that you want to remember, especially if you have a little boy that you pass down, that you don't always have to have this coat of armor on all the time. You don't always have to, be at 100%. It's okay to be at 0 and say, hey, I'm at 0 right now.
Right.
And so I think it literally starts with talking about it with other people. But the other part is give yourself grace. Because I think when I think about being a dad, when I think about just being a man, how many times do we actually give ourselves space for grace? Allow ourselves to feel like we make mistakes, allow ourselves to actually rest. And a lot of times I think as a man you're expected to hold so much up, but there's also a lot of power in resting.
Absolutely.
As well, to say, actually I don't have as much right now and I need to hold a little bit back for yourself, because at the end of the day, if you're completely burnt out, how good are you going to be to your family, to your kid at that point? If you don't leave anything left in the tank for yourself. And so I think it's something that I feel like in some aspects we're getting better at in society, and in other places I feel like it's still that constant push that when you start to see more of that, you still also have a whole nother side that's saying, well, you need to go harder than that, and that's not good enough. That's not the ideals of man, and kind of defining what it means to be the modern dad.
Yeah. No, I feel you on that. I mean, you said a lot in that, as you normally do. You always got those gems you be dropping. I'd be trying to drop.
See, that's why I don't be trying to talk like that.
What, you don't want to tell the people?
That's Brandon low-key saying you talk too much, and this is my podcast. And it is. I understand I had you as the first guest, but I ain't asking you to talk that much.
Listen, let me tell you something. Just give me a second to break down some of the things that you're saying for the people. That's all I'm saying. I want it all. But no, I mean, you did. You said some great stuff in there that it's important. One of the biggest things that stood out to me is there is power in rest. I mean, it's kind of ironic that you and I right now are making this recording at the time that we are. But I'm just saying there's power in rest, because when you think about it for real, if we don't take the time to rest, if we don't take the time to put some into that emergency reserve tank, that's when bad things happen. I mean, if we're being 100% real, that's when bad stuff happens. Whether it's a breakdown in a relationship, whether it's a breakdown in your situation, whether it's a breakdown at work, maybe you make some horrible decisions that end up separating you from that very thing that you care about, that child, right? That individual or that family that separates you out there. There's power in rest, and that's huge, man. I'm taking that home, like legit. Not messing with you, I know I mess with you a lot, but that is actually really, really key. All right, I'm gonna switch it up a little bit. So I want you to talk to me about you and your role, and I'm gonna give a little background. So the way that you and I met was because we were involved in local politics here in Columbus, Ohio. You were big time in the county and doing your thing as a director.
Very much up and coming.
But you were a director still, right?
I was a manager.
Oh, you're a manager. Okay, well, listen, to us little folk out in the community that be out there like, come take this flyer. That was a big thing.
I'm going to read in between lines.
Okay.
When me and Brandon met, I was the minority engagement manager for the Ohio Democratic Party. It was the first time I ever had like a statewide position, which was a big deal. And Brandon somehow finagled me in agreeing to become a part of Young Black Dems, and I never wanted to be a part of Young Dems because, believe it or not, I don't like the politics sometimes of what goes on in like Young Dems Club or just any auxiliary group.
That's fair.
At the level that it goes on to compared to what I already have to deal with on the day-to-day. And so, again, Brandon comes to me. He said, hey, why don't you be the communications director for COYBD? And I'm like, I deal with this nonstop.
Yeah.
And then you want me to get off of work
After hours.
and deal with this some more?
It's about the local community.
Clearly he won because eventually I took over as president when he resigned.
Exactly.
So,
there were some very positive things that came out of that. Let's just be honest. There was a lot of positivity that came out of that position. There were some struggles, but there was a lot of positivity that came out of it.
Depending on who you talk to.
Depending on who you talk to, that's fair. That's totally fair. And I appreciate you giving me that subtle correction because I say county, and you definitely went in there and said, let me make sure he gets his statewide. No, it's okay.
I was even trying to do it.
See, it's okay. I get it. It's all about being real. It's all about being real on this podcast. No. So statewide position, right? Mm-hmm. You were doing your thing. And I will tell you, and I've always felt this way, and this is 100% real. I've looked up to you since we met. And since we, went through all of that, and I remember trying to convince you to join up, and I remember the struggles, but I also, on the personal side, remember the struggle of trying to just be your friend. Do you remember it?
It was not that hard to be.
Nah, you didn't trust anybody.
Now I'm gonna have to set the record straight again.
Here we go.
So it wasn't about being my friend. So Brandon on like day one, he said, "What's good, brother?" And I was like, "No, you gotta earn the title of brother. Like we can be friends, but like brother is earned."
He said that. You have to earn it.
Like I could call you family, what's good fam, but like
between a brother and a fam?
If I call you bro or sis and stuff like that, like we really been in the trenches together. Like I trust you like no other to have my back. But also it was, I think part of what made that switch happen so quickly is like when you realize somebody sees you.
Yeah.
In ways that you forget to see yourself sometimes. And we all, I feel like, need people in our corner that recognize our superpowers that sometimes either we forget to recognize or we don't even notice are there because of what's going on in life. Again, being a dad is also, when you have that support group of other like-minded men that also understand what it's like to be through there, and even though their experience might not be exactly like y'all, y'all are bonded together and y'all share that bond and y'all work through that stuff, and lo and behold, almost 10 years later now, brother, like I'm taking 6-hour trips just so our kids can hang out again.
And I appreciate that. And you already led right into what I was going to, which is that bond and that relationship, right? And sometimes we, specifically in the dad field, we get that space of having to be superhero all the time, right? And we build up this space of resilience, and sometimes we find ourselves blocking out people that may recognize who we are, right? Like, I see you. I hear a lot of people kind of cliche see that, like, oh, I see you, King, that comment, which is good, but at the same time, like, I want you to really mean it. I want you to really.
Say, I low key hate when people say, I see you, King. I'll be feeling like that's like the most, like, I know it's something like it can be very meaningful sometimes,
Absolutely.
but also I feel like sometimes that just gets thrown around as taboo.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's like play, and it's like, do you really see me?
That's true. Like calling you brother early, and okay, gotcha. But I saw you, King.
And this is why we're friends.
That's it. But okay, talk to me a little bit though. In this world, because specifically, let's be real. Specifically in the world that we met in politics, there's a lot of fake. There's a lot of in your face. I'm here to be with you. I'm here to kick it with you. But the reality is, I'm just trying to find what I can get out of you. And I'm gonna say that on my side. You don't have to agree to that. But I'm just saying, from my perspective, that's what you get. And so, where I'm going with that is, a lot of people today, from a political realm, have a lot of distrust in the system, right? And when you start talking about dad and dad being the lead in the family and kind of helping to guide where things are going, just talk to me a little bit about like how do we navigate the U.S. political system? Because that's difficult as a father. I mean, I had a conversation today, as a matter of fact, with my barber, and we were sitting down, we're talking about what's happening, and he's like, man, I know you were in the community, I know you used to be in politics back in the day. He's like, talk to me about the upcoming election, bro. Like, what should I do? And he's a dad, right? He's a dad of I believe 3, maybe 4 children, and he's trying to figure it out for himself, right? He's like, bro, I don't know what to do. And I know the decision that I make affects my children, right? Their future and what's happening. But part of, I think, that distrust that a lot of, especially fathers have, is I don't want to lead my family down the wrong path. So from your point of view, right, your perspective, which I'm going to ask you to take a little bit of the bias out just for the listener's sake, right? If I'm just looking at this thing called politics as a father, as a dad, trying to figure out life and how I lead, what do I need to be looking for? How do I tell heads or tails of this whole thing?
I mean, I don't think it's always about having, especially politics, figured out. Like, unless you really work in it, I don't think the average person is ever going to fully understand it, especially how much it changes from time to time. I'll start by saying, like, definitely it's not hard for me to be unbiased in my politics. I literally did my thesis for my master's on the erosion of the American democracy being centered on the fact that people just don't trust politics anymore. They don't trust their politicians anymore, and I focused on really from around that civil rights era. And right with the JFK assassination, and then you have the Watergate scandal, then you got the Reagan years, then you got the Bush years, and you got and at that time I think I ended with what happened with Hurricane Katrina, and you have these event after event after event that tells people you cannot fully trust this system, even though this system, and what I told your barber today, you don't have to do politics, but politics is still going to do you, whether or not you participate or not. And so, right now, I think we're at a battle in our country, and just trying to find the reasons to show up. You don't always want to show up every day, but you have to. It's the same thing with an election. You can have a lot of reasons not to vote, not to want to participate, but guess what? Do you want somebody making the decisions that impact your family on a day-to-day basis? Right. And when you look at your family, we talk about protection, part of your protection is also doing your civic duty to vote. And if you're a person of color, like, we went through so much just to even have that right. And so it has to be a pride point again, but that's easier said than done. Like, when you're worried about what bills are you going to pay at this time, and I'll be the first one to say I've definitely been there more than once before, where even working in politics, I didn't feel like thinking about it because I had so many other things that I had to worry about. Funds being low, debts being high, and still trying to figure it all up. But again, it's not about figuring it out all the time. It's still about showing up.
Let's be honest for a moment. politics is not all about the money the way that people think about it, especially for those that are working in the system, right? Those that are actually putting the boots on the ground, that are organizing, that are getting people out there. It's not about the money for you.
The first job I had in politics, I made $32,000. For about the first maybe 5-6 years of my career, I was under $50,000. I'll put it like this. Politics very much was the have and have nots. Like when you look like us, we weren't getting the higher paid positions. We weren't getting the higher director positions, and it was hard because you will also see your white counterparts a lot of time, and you're like, I know I put in more work than that person, and this person gets rewarded for everything.
Right.
And they consistently make mistakes, and I got to work 10 times harder just to prove myself. But you just, again, you keep plugging away, you keep at it. And for me, I love this. Like anybody that asks me, as exhausting as this career is, I absolutely love it. When you ask me how I feel about being a dad, I absolutely love it. Does my son wear me out sometimes? Yes, he does.
Yep.
But I love this every single day. And every single day I can find a reason again why I show up and keep showing up and keep showing up.
Okay. I love that. So as a dad, when I'm out here, if I don't, what I heard you say, if I don't participate in the system is still going to participate with me.
Yes.
So I still got to get out there.
Yes.
I need to do the research. I need to make sure that I understand who's in it for me.
And you really started it in the grassroots. See, you've been asking all the questions, so we're going to switch this up. All politics is local, and a lot of times I feel like people don't realize their day-to-day issues are solved locally. They're not solved at the congressional level. They're not solved with necessarily just a presidential race. So you talk a little bit, because you've really been a community advocate in the grassroots, an activist, an active member, a respected member in the Columbus community. So talk about the local angle.
I mean, listen, trying to help people understand where the local level is has been always a dream, and it's been something, a mission. I mean, I've been doing that for a long time, and even though I'm not actively out there as I was for a long time, I still have these conversations. I mean, i.e. the barber shop today, right? Like, I still have these conversations helping people to understand, like, local is where you start. And to be honest with you, as a dad, right, when somebody says to me, Brandon, how do I get involved? And I want to make things better for my child, that local space is it, man. You can show up at your local civic association. You can show up at your local area commission. Here in Columbus, those are some of the local things that we have. In your city, it might be something different. But you can show up at those spaces. If the mayor or city council, any of them have any type of meetings or events or things where they're coming out to the community and saying, hey, we want to be a part of it, or we want to hear from you, that is where you have the opportunity to do just that, right? Like, you have the opportunity to come out and get involved and get engaged. Some people think getting involved means, man, I got kids, I got soccer practice, I got basketball, all this. Getting involved doesn't necessarily mean you need to dedicate days, months, years of your life, right? They don't have to go to the levels that I've been at. Surely not the level that you're at today, because that takes a special calling, let's just be honest. But you can get involved with an hour a month. Yeah. An hour a month sitting down at a local meeting, just understanding what's happening, the zoning that's happening at that property across the street, that commercial property down the street where you're like, man, we had a grocery store and I'm trying to understand what's going to happen. And they come up and they say, hey, we want to talk to y'all a little bit about what's going on down there. As a dad, that's a very easy way for you to get involved and understand what might happen for the future of your kids.
But you also talk about, when we're parents, the example we're supposed to set for our kid. And what better way sometimes to allow our children to actually see us still, taking those steps to be involved.
Yeah.
And when they have those questions, like I remember the first time my son actually registered, hey, I'm going to the board of elections to go vote, and had questions for me and his mom, and it's like, that's why we do it also.
Right.
To show them why this is important.
Absolutely.
Even if they don't fully understand it, to show them
Show them
something
the commitment.
different early on.
Absolutely. Show them that commitment, right? Like a lot of us don't necessarily take it as serious as we should.
Yeah.
And that example can be huge, even if you don't have all the answers. Because we know we like to wear that S on our chest, right? Even if you don't have all the answers, you can still show the example of like, hey, showing up, doing my part means contributing, right? Means clicking this button. Hey, baby, it's more than just that little I voted today sticker. You know, what does it really mean behind that? And I think as a dad, man, that's one of the biggest examples in this country, at least, that you can show as a lasting impression of how you can put your name and your mark on what happens in the future.
Now, I want to ask you a follow-up, because you talk about, you said the S on the chest.
Yeah.
And so, what for you has been kryptonite at time being a dad? What's some of the things that have been most challenging since you came into fatherhood?
To be honest with you, finding the love, man. Finding the love of who you are outside of the house. And what I mean by that is the real work that I used to do from a community, advocate perspective. I haven't done that in a long time. And most of that is because I'm at home. The wife's got a job, I got a job, we both working. You get, you pick this kid up, you pick that kid up, we gonna meet up at 5, somebody cooking, somebody doing. If it's normal days, she's cooking, let's just be honest. If it's summertime, she's throwing my butt outside on the grill. And I'm gonna tell you, as soon as it hits 65 degrees, she's like, you going outside? you gonna do your duty?
Right.
But she got me whipped. But I mean, ultimately, bro, like, you're doing so much that for me, I've let a little of that go, And so trying to figure that out from a dad perspective can be difficult, right? And that's probably the biggest space where I'm like, man, I want to get back out there, I want to do it. But it changes too. That example changes. And for me, that shifted to a ministry space. And, you and I have talked about that a lot. And, I'm doing the posts and the preaching and all that kind of good stuff. But ultimately, I'm still actively involved, right? I'm still communicating. I'm still talking about, it shifted. It's now me and my daughter having conversations, right?
Yeah.
When we're driving, hey, baby, look, that over there, daddy had something to do with that, And it gives her a little piece of like, well, if dad did, maybe I can, right? Like, and that S on the chest shifts a little bit. It's no longer, look at me, I'm doing this right now, but it might turn to like, look at what dad did and what you could do.
But again, I hear that example again. How many times are kids scared to do something and they see dad do it and they're like, oh, I can do that.
Absolutely.
That's not hard. Like the number of times I have to talk to my son, because once he see me do something, like, he's fearless now. I remember the first time I took him to the ocean, he was like, no, you ain't ready to jump in these waves. And he's like, no, Dad, I got it. You haven't learned how to swim.
Right.
Sir, you're like 3.5, 4 years old. You don't have it. But the way that when we put that cape on and our S on our chest, that it's almost like this special blanket of invincibility that comes to our kids and just seeing us do something and wanting to do it after us.
And listen, and that's one of the best feelings ever when they actually succeed and when they don't, right? Like when you get to teach them a lesson of how to stand tall, how to keep going, how to keep trying. There's so much power in that. But I think it goes back to one of the things that we said a little earlier, man. We got to know also for ourselves when that S is getting a little dull, when we need to be poured into, when we need to reach out for that recharge ourselves, right? Like we've got to know when to stop and say, all right, cool. Let me figure it out, right? Let me do what needs to be done to get recharged myself, get in contact with my people.
That sounds like boundaries, like having healthy boundaries.
Okay.
And I think I'm going to go one further.
Okay.
There's times where I'm like to my kid, hey, Chris, just give me a minute.
Yeah.
Like, I need a second. Can you give Dad a second?
Absolutely.
And part of that is, yes, I need rejuvenation, but also teaching him, it's okay to ask for a break sometimes if you need a break for it.
Absolutely. Who don't need a break around here? And when that cape is on, you be like, I'm trying to. And if you don't get that break, boy,
Exactly.
You might say something that you didn't mean to say,
Yeah.
do something you didn't mean to do. So
Mm-hmm.
I definitely get that. Well, listen, man, I cannot say thank you enough for one, driving 6 hours to come see your people, and visiting and doing the whole thing, but also just for stopping by and being a part of this, man. I mean, it's midnight over here, and we still talking.
We gotta do this again.
Absolutely.
So what y'all don't know is, I work in politics. My actual bachelor's degree was in film production with a focus in directing.
Yes.
And so Brandon will tell you I am forever going back into that nerdy wonkiness of film and producing and directing and
So you gonna direct this podcast from afar? Or what
Absolutely
you gonna do?
not.
No, I need some.
I'll give you
help.
some tidbits.
Oh, do I have to pay for them?
No.
Oh, okay.
Do you ever pay for that?
So it's been great having you here on the show and kicking off the first podcast. I don't want to open up. We just talked about how bills is high. I don't need no more.
Look, while I'm talking, Brandon, if you need a headshot, because I'm pub, because you don't pub yourself enough.
Oh.
If you need a headshot, if you need good pictures, if you need a wedding photographer, one of the best photographers in Ohio, but especially Central Ohio, because he not going to shout himself out. So I'm going to shout him out.
I appreciate
Go
it.
see Brandon. What's your...
It's the one OLV photo if you go to IG.
Oh, okay. Can we find you anywhere else?
Yeah, you can find me on Facebook. You can find the website at olvphoto.com.
Yeah, so about 3 of my photo shoots, if you've ever been to my Instagram page, this man did it, works wonders and really makes you come to life even in still camera. It has the ability to bring the best out of you in every photo he takes. So
I appreciate that. And you know what? Before we end this, because actually you reminded me of one thing that you didn't talk about. You started something pretty big this year. Well, last year, technically.
we're going to talk about that on a later episode.
Oh, you want to talk about that later?
We're going to talk about that on a later
I'm just saying right now, this man out here running the world.
But we got a lot to talk about because
know.
we can really go deep into. I think we just scratched the surface, but as this podcast goes on, and me knowing who my brother is, I guarantee you, he's going to go a lot deeper into probing and getting people to actually talk about real life. Because again, y'all heard a little bit of challenge, but when I tell you, boy, there's some challenges.
Yeah.
And if it had not been for the Lord, where would I be?
Well, now you want to get preaching at it. Okay. So we try to end it, and you try to preach at the end.
We gonna rap.
I think it's his podcast. I'm gonna just be honest with you. It's not mine anymore.
Not.
But to my brother, Chris Scott, I want to just say thank you, man. I mean, you have been phenomenal. You, as I said earlier, you are an amazing man. Somebody that I've always looked up to since I met you.
I look up to you.
Huh?
You're like a really, and if I recall, aren't you technically slightly older than me too?
See, now, once again, we're going to go ahead and end this thing. We calling people's ages out. You said you want to get deep. Now we over here. Aren't you older than me? Aren't you a little closer to the end of this process than me? Yes, sir. By all of like a month and a half. That's it. That's all I got.
Well, I mean, it's still older.
I'm gonna just let that be where that is. But truly, I appreciate you coming through, man, and being a part of the first episode. Thank you for putting up with me and everything that we did on this. But at the end of the day, to those that are listening, again, this whole series and everything that you hear on this podcast is to be real, and it's to be a space for you to hopefully gain a little extra, get a little energy, get a little pour into you, and know that you're not alone. You're not the only one out there dealing with some of the things that we deal with as dads every single day. You're not the only one having to put on that cape. You're not the only one feeling like that cape about to fly off either at any given moment. And so it's important to understand that we're here with you. We see you, King. we see you, and we appreciate you, and we want you to come back.
Twin. Nobody knows me. Hold on. I'm going to stop because I don't want no copyright issues.
That's
so
true.
bad.
You about to get us all set up on episode 1.
I don't know if a cover counts.
Listen, well, you know, we'll have to put something on there on detail. We do not own that song. But if you were on TikTok today, you probably heard it about 6 or 7 times in 2 seconds. Thank you for that. I appreciate you.